Hey y'all, this is Old Pats with Backpacking Florida. Today we're discussing one of Florida's most widely known and beloved endangered species. And it's my desire to give you one of the most comprehensive looks into this animal's habitat, behaviors, and life cycle information, as well as look at some in-depth scientific studies to determine how we can help in conservation efforts to protect this keystone species. So without further ado, let's talk about the Florida panther. This is where the journey began for me. I moved to Florida in 2017, and one day soon thereafter spotted a big cat moving in the early morning hours behind my home. At the time, I was employed at the United States Postal Service and exclaimed to my coworkers that I'd seen a cougar. They informed me that what many mistake as cougars is actually Florida panthers, but it was highly unlikely that I'd seen one due to their endangered status and typical range near the Everglades. They wrote this off as, in all probability, seeing a bobcat. However, I am familiar with bobcats and understand fully that a bobcat does not have a 3-foot tail. When I clocked out for the day, I returned home and researched the Florida panther online. What I found verified that what I had witnessed with my own eyes was indeed a Florida panther. Several months later, near the end of 2017, I once again witnessed the panther as it moved quickly across my backyard. Yet no one believed me. I looked for tracks and signs that I could photograph in order to report the sighting to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. However, the ground was too hard and I could not find any sign. From that point, I carried my phone with me every time I passed by our glass sliding doors. In 2018, I glimpsed the panther slowly moving from the high weeds along the lake and casually strolling behind my home. I hit the record button and slowly came out through the sliders onto the back lanai. I walked to the edge of my screen enclosure and slowly raised my phone up and hit the record button. I quietly signaled my presence with the universal animal call. The panther stopped, sat down, swished its tail back and forth, and just stared in my direction. In this moment, there seemed to be a connection between myself and this magnificent wild creature. I then began to quietly speak, which startled it as it leapt to its feet and ran into the wood line. I lowered my phone and hit the record button once again, disappointed that this moment had passed, yet excited that I'd caught all this on video. However, when I went inside and reviewed the video, all I had captured was footage of my feet. No pun intended. How devastating. I realized that in my excitement I had started recording before I stepped through the sliders, captured footage of the pool deck as I walked, and ultimately stopped the recording as I raised the phone to record the panther. Then foolishly hit the record after the panther hit the wood line and recorded my walk of shame back into the house. Nevertheless, I had been affected by this encounter with such a large and powerful cat, not in a zoo, but in my very backyard. This is what set me on a course to getting a degree in biological science and later in animal studies, or anthrozoology. The Florida panther left an indelible mark on me. The subspecies coreyi is named after naturalist and hunter Charles Barney Corey, 1857 to 1921. Corey first described the Florida panther as a subspecies of cougar in 1896 in his book, Hunting and Fishing in Florida. Adult panthers can be visually identified by size and color. The adult male can weigh between 100 and 160 pounds, while the adult female weighs between 70 and 100 pounds. They vary in height at the shoulder between 24 and 28 inches and measure from 6 to 7.2 feet from nose to tip of the tail. Puma kittens are spotted, which helps to camouflage them in the shadows of their den. These spots fade as they approach maturity at the end of their first year. Puma adults are a uniform tan color with lighter fur on their lower chests, belly, and inner legs. This uniform color conceals them effectively in a variety of settings, including the open range. Pumas have long, round tails, nearly 2/3 the length of their head and body. tails help balance the body, especially during ambush pounces on prey. The tip of the tail is black all around. A panther can easily be determined to be in the area through visual signs. Panther tracks measure approximately 3 1/4 inches by 3 1/4 inches, or about 4 fingers wide. The heel pad is shaped like the letter M, and the 4-toe pad imprints are tear-shaped. Unlike canine tracks, the panther's digits are offset like a human has varying lengths of fingers. While a dog's middle toes are the same length and their outside toes are the same length, a dog has a single lobe on the leading edge of the heel pad and lacks a third lobe on the trailing edge of their heel pad. In comparison, the panther has 2 lobes on the leading edge and 3 lobes on the trailing edge. A panther's claws will rarely be visible in the track unless 1. It is running, or 2. The soil is extremely soft. A bobcat's tracks are very similar to the panther's, but only measure approximately 1 1/4 inches wide and 1 5/8 inch long. Think 2 fingers versus 4 fingers width. Panthers can also be identified by their scat. You know, panther poo. Panther scat typically consists of hair and bone fragments. Scat is tubular shaped, approximately 1 1/2 inches in diameter, twisted, and can be up to 10 inches long. The ends are frequently tapered and pointed. Once again, the bobcat scat closely resembles that of the panther, but differentiations can be determined by a simple little taste test. Sorry, dad joke. The differences can be identified by length and diameter. Thinking bobcat? Just think smaller. Now, let's get to the source of all this poo. A panther's diet consists of approximately 70% deer, wild hogs, and raccoons. The remaining 30% consists of small prey and livestock, which we will discuss further in the video. The breeding population of Florida panther calls South Florida home. They mostly reside to the south of the Caloosahatchee River. However, it is not uncommon to find male panthers throughout the Florida peninsula, and one was once reported as far north as Georgia. Which brings us to our next point, mating. Male panthers are indeed territorial, but are also polygamous, meaning they are promiscuous lovers. The female reaches sexual maturity at approximately 1 1/2 to 2 1/2 years old, while the male matures a bit later at approximately 3 years old. Panthers communicate with one another leading up to this mating ritual with yowling or caterwauling. Panthers do not roar, and they also make scrapes, as we will discuss later, and mark with scent. Check out this short love story. Panthers are induced ovulators, meaning the stimulus of copulation triggers the release of the egg by the ovary. This is great for panther conservation, as this increases the probability for solitary cats that the egg will be fertilized. The gestation period for kittens is 92 to 96 days. This starts the life cycle for the panther as they begin their journey in a small den located in palmetto thickets. A litter typically consists of 1 to 4 kittens. Mama's milk has 6 times more fat than cow's milk, and it shows. From just over 1 pound at birth to approximately 10 pounds by week 8, the kitten has increased its weight to 9 times its birth weight. Females will not breed again until the kittens are 1.5 to 2 years old or able to survive on their own. Should the kittens be lost for any reason, predators, illness, etc., the female is ready to breed again immediately. At approximately 2 months old, the kitten begins to hunt with mom. Around 6 months old, their spots begin to disappear and they begin to learn to hunt on their own. Between 9 and 12 months, they are catching small prey on their own. By the time they are 1.5 years old, they are stalking raccoons, armadillos, and an occasional hog or deer. Completing this cycle of life, a Florida panther can live up to 20 years or more in the wild. When it comes to the hunt, the panther is not so different from your domestic cat. Just as your little tabby cat loves to sharpen its claws on all your expensive furniture, so the panther loves a good cabbage palm with a smooth trunk. While they will settle for a standing palm, they greatly prefer a downed tree, as they straddle the log and rake their claws along either side of the trunk. Panthers are crepuscular, meaning they are most active in hunting at dawn and dusk. After all, panthers are nocturnal and choose to rest during the heat of the day under the cool shade of a palmetto thicket in a daybed. Similar to your little tomcat, the Florida panther stalks its prey. A panther will crouch down low up on its hind legs and silently stalk its prey, occasionally freezing to avoid detection. When it senses the time is right, it will lunge with claws extended as it grabs its prey around the neck and shoulders, also digging its hind claws into the prey's flanks. The panther then deals a fatal bite to the back of the neck, severing the spinal cord, or a suffocating bite to the throat, crushing the windpipe. The panther then eats its fill of up to 20 to 30 pounds of meat, beginning with the internal organs, which are chocked full of vitamins and nutrients. When they have eaten their fill, the panther wisely caches its kill. This is a good demonstration of the cognitive ability of the Florida panther. A panther will drag their prey away from a kill site to eat in seclusion. They grab the prey by the neck and drag it while straddling the body, as you can see in the photo. A drag mark with a panther track on each side. As the panther is consuming the organs, it wisely removes the stomach and intestines and buries them off to the side under leaf litter with no intention to consume. Any leftover meat is then cached in soil and dirt and covered up with debris to keep cool. In this manner, the panther can sometimes feed for several days on the same carcass. When the panther is finished with the kill, they will leave the carcass uncovered, perhaps for the scavengers to clean up. Another perspective of the panther's cognitive ability is their form of communicating. Everything from a vocal chirp, peep, whistle, purr, moan, scream, growl, hiss, to yowling or caterwauling. They express themselves through a broad variety of sounds. However, they are not limited to vocal expression, but also rely upon ground sign and scent. One common occurrence is scrapes. These are made when they push their hind feet backwards, piling up leaves or pine needles, or marking with urine, occasionally scat. The males scrape to mark their territory. The females scrape when in estrus to let the males know that they are hot to trot. The Seminole tribe has a deep history with the panther, or as they call them, Kuachobi, crawls on 4 legs. According to the legend of the Seminoles, they believe panther was the first animal to walk the earth. They also believe panther holds power to heal different ailments. The Seminole tribe consists of 8 different clans. One of these clans is Panther Clan, the largest in Florida, along with bear, deer, wind, big town, bird, snake, and otter. The Florida panther has recently been featured in a full-length documentary, Path of the Panther, which tracks the endangered Florida panther and the protection efforts of its ever-shrinking habitat. This 2022 National Geographic documentary is now available to view on the Nat Geo network and also Roku television. Let's talk about panther conservation, along with what can be done to help them. To get a deeper understanding of underlying threats, we're going to turn to some scientific studies. Our first study is from the Journal of Mammalogy. Link is included in the video description. And we're discussing events that alerted wildlife management that we are looking at a possible extinction scenario. This study will show us what was done to turn the tides for the Florida panther and whether or not it was successful. In 1995, 8 female pumas from Texas, Puma concolor stanleyana, were introduced into 5 areas in South Florida to remediate morphological and biomedical correlates of inbreeding depression that threatened the long-term survival of Florida panthers, Puma concolor corii. Initial analysis of the results of this genetic introgression initiative has highlighted its success, including growth of the population, increased genetic heterozygosity, and reduced frequencies of physical traits associated with inbreeding, including cryptorchidism. However, panthers remain isolated from other puma populations, and natural gene flow is not currently plausible. Using data collected from 65 panthers in the post-genetic introgression era between 1998 and 2020, we assessed the benefits accrued to male panther reproductive parameters via this management initiative, the effect of genetic variables, and compared results to historic data. Microsatellite data were used to determine individual heterozygosity levels and qualify panther genetic ancestry as admixed. For example, panthers descended from crosses with female Texas puma, or canonical. For example, panthers that comprised most of the population prior to genetic introgression. A total of 47 admixed and 10 canonical panthers were identified. Mean individual heterozygosity of canonical panthers was significantly different from admixed panthers. Admixed panthers exhibited higher mean values for total testicular volume, structurally normal spermatozoa, and total sperm in comparison to canonical panthers. The progressive improvement of sperm metrics demonstrates that the benefits of genetic introgression continue to have a positive impact on the population more than 25 years since the release of the Texas pumas. However, the Florida panther population remains small, isolated, and vulnerable to deterministic and stochastic events that warrants continued monitoring to assess when additional genetic introgression initiatives will need to be implemented in the future. Let's get a closer look at the results of this study. Samples were collected from 65 male Florida panthers between 1998 and 2020, including 29 subadults and 36 adults. This included 9 samples collected via electroejaculation and 56 samples collected post-mortem via gamete rescue. The average age of sampled panthers was 3.67 years. The average body mass was 44.5 kg for subadults, 56.1 kg for adults, and 51 kg for the collective sample. 5 of 65, or 7.7%, of the male panthers were cryptorchid, and 6 of 65, 9.2%, 2 of the 9 collected by electroejaculation, were aspermic. The sperm preparations for males that contained spermatozoa were considered oligospermic, which is low sperm concentration, a condition found in 10 out of 65, or 15.4%, 1 electroejaculation sample and 9 gamete rescue samples. Cryptorchidism was not documented in any aspermic panthers but occurred in 1 oligospermic male. Our data show an overall improvement in male reproductive parameters since 1995. While cryptorchidism continues to be documented in the panther population, the frequency of this condition has declined significantly in years following genetic restoration in 1995. This improvement is reflected in the fact that most males in our study were admixed panthers collected after genetic restoration and included only 3 of 47 individuals with cryptorchidism versus 2 out of 10 in our sample of canonical panthers. If the improvements are examined across a broader sample of post-introgression male panthers with estimated birth years equal to or greater than 2010 to 2020, for example, inclusive of the 2 most recent generation of panthers, only 7.5%, sample size 120, have been documented with cryptorchidism. These findings provide further support for the persistent beneficial impacts to the panther population from the genetic introgression project. It has been greater than 25 years since managers took a risk with genetic introgression as a means of averting the extinction of the Florida panther. The collection of evidence related to the beneficial impacts that this management initiative has had on the recovery of the panther population continues to mount. The improvement of several male reproductive parameters and reduction in cryptorchidism further substantiate how improved fitness of admixed panthers has assisted with ensuring the long-term prospects for viability of the population. Moving forward, it is imperative that there is a continued focus on a long-term monitoring, large-scale land acquisitions, as well as improved land and prey-based management initiatives. These factors will all play a critical role in ensuring the continued progress toward recovery of the Florida panther. Thanks to the genetic introgression of Texas pumas, the near extinction numbers of 20 to 30 Florida panthers left in the wild have increased to between 120 to 230. Let's see what we can do to keep this trend going up. Sadly, genetic flow is not the only threat that the Florida panther is facing. Disease is now thought to be the number 3 cause for panther deaths. FeLV, or feline leukemia virus, most commonly affects house cats but can be fatal to panthers. Panthers that test positive for FeLV in the field are transported to a holding facility for care. They are only deemed releasable if a vet verifies the panther clear of the virus. Since 2002, FeLV has resulted in the death of at least 5 Florida panthers. Another fatal disease to panthers is also spread through a favorite panther food source. Research was conducted and journaled in the Journal of Wildlife Diseases. I will include the link to this study in the video description. Let's take a close look at Pseudorabies virus, or PRV, also known as Odjeski's disease. Feral swine, Sus, an important prey species for the endangered Florida panther, the Puma concolor corii, is the natural host for Pseudorabies virus, or PRV. Prior to this study, PRV had been detected in just 3 panthers. To determine the effect of PRV on the panther population, we prospectively necropsied 199 panthers and retrospectively reviewed necropsy and laboratory findings, re-examined histology, and tested archived tissues using real-time PCR from 46 undiagnosed panther mortalities. 7 additional infections, 2 which were prospective, 5 retrospective, were detected for a total of 10 confirmed panther mortalities due to PRV. To further evaluate the effect of PRV, we categorized radio-collared and uncollared panther mortalities sampled from 1981 to 2018 based on the likelihood of PRV infection as confirmed, probable, suspected, possible, or unlikely, or negative. Of 168 radio-collared panthers necropsied, PRV was the cause of death for between 8 and 32 panthers. The number of radio-collared panthers' mortalities due to PRV was estimated to be 15, representing 8.9% of mortalities. Gross necropsy findings in 10 confirmed cases were nonspecific. Microscopic changes included slight to mild perivascular cuffing and gliosis, primarily in the brainstem, lymphoplasmacytic meningoencephalitis in the cerebral cortex, and intranuclear inclusion bodies, adrenal medulla. The PRV glycoprotein C gene sequences from 3 positive panthers grouped with a sequence from a Florida feral swine. Our findings indicate that PRV may be an important and underdiagnosed cause of death in Florida panthers. Now, let's walk through this process. The FWC and the National Park Service captured panthers during 1981 to 2018 in southern Florida, south of 288 North, using trained hounds. Panthers were immobilized using injectable anesthetics, administered remotely, and once anesthetized were examined, vaccinated, and sampled. Now that they have collected samples from captured panthers, both collared and uncollared, and used many more necropsied panthers, what did they find? Well, I won't bore you with all the medical terminology, but instead show you some charts and discuss some of the more interesting findings. Looking to the estimated PRV proportional mortality, Pseudorabies virus infection was the confirmed cause of death in 8 out of 168, or 4.8%, radio-collared panthers necropsied during the combined periods. 1 radio-collared panther was categorized as probable PRV infection, 7 were categorized as suspected, and 16 were categorized as possible. Combining the categories, confirmed, probable, suspected, and possible, gave a maximum of 32, 19% mortalities, possibly due to PRV. Looking at the telemetry data from the collared panthers, all deaths of radio-collared panthers due to PRV were considered acute. Movements based on telemetry data were apparently normal 2 to 4 days prior to death, and then became progressively restricted. Carcasses were often found in open areas. Most panther PRV cases were detected north of I-75, where greater consumption of feral swine has been documented. Confirmed cases were especially concentrated in and around game enclosures that contain high densities of feral swine. South of I-75, predation on feral swine is less common, and in Everglades National Park, feral swine represented an insignificant component of panther diet. Feral swine comprised a larger proportion, 23%, of panther diet in southern Big Cypress National Preserve. This was still small compared to swine comprising an estimated 59% of the biomass consumed in the north. During the study period, as many as 8 radio-collared panthers whose death was, or could be, attributed to PRV died in or adjacent to, within 100 meters of, high fence enclosures containing dense populations of feral swine. This included 6 confirmed and probable cases in 2003. Although feral swine populations have declined in much of panther range, higher concentrations to the north could affect panther population expansion into central Florida. Management to increase white-tailed deer density could decrease the risk of PRV to panthers by reducing their dependence on feral swine as a prey species. Additionally, feral swine management such as vaccination, harvest management targeting higher-risk older swine, reduction of swine densities, and restriction of the use of dogs for hunting feral swine in panther range may decrease the prevalence of PRV or of viral shedding. These management actions would be most practical and likely more effective in closed feral swine populations. Research is needed to identify a safe and effective vaccine suitable for use in panthers. A commercially available inactivated vaccine is not available in the U.S. The PRV eradication program resulted in the elimination of PRV from domestic swine in the U.S. in 2004. It remains endemic in feral swine populations, being found throughout the range of feral swine in the U.S. and worldwide. Therefore, PRV continues to be a threat to domestic animals and wildlife, especially those preying on or scavenging wild boar or feral swine. This study demonstrated that PRV is having a larger effect on the Florida panther population than previously documented. An estimated 9% of radio-collared panther mortalities were due to PRV, making it the third leading diagnosed cause of death, behind intraspecific aggression and vehicular collision. It should be no surprise to anyone that vehicle collisions happen with Florida panthers. However, what may surprise you is that 59% of panther deaths are caused by vehicle collisions. Looking over the statistics, as reported in the Panther Pulse, over the past 2 years shows an alarming trend. In 2021 and 2022, there were a combined total of 54 panther deaths, and 45 of those were vehicle collisions. In 2021 and 2022, there were 27 deaths per year, in comparison to only 1 confirmed litter of 3 kittens born each year. With 9 times as many recorded panther deaths as panther births, how can we expect to prevent extinction? As the human population in Florida booms, panther habitat pays the price. With beachfront property too pricey for the typical purchaser, many are looking to build new homes in the suburbs. Since 2017, I've witnessed population expansion move east of I-75 and thousands of acres of woodland bulldozed into piles and burnt in order to make way for quote-unquote progress. With the average male panther utilizing approximately 200 square miles for his territory, how can we continue to expand inland to make way for our homes without threatening the existence of a keystone species? This next study we are looking at will answer that question. Also, keep in mind how this scientific study ties into the 2 previous that we have discussed. Breeding Florida panthers, Puma concolor corii, are currently restricted to a small area in southwest Florida south of the Caloosahatchee River. Expansion of their range and numbers is necessary for long-term survival and recovery. We estimated the amount and location of breeding panther habitat still remaining in Florida using a modified version of a published random forest habitat model. Unexpectedly, we found that a large proportion of the state, 41%, is still suitable panther habitat. Most of this habitat is concentrated in the Panhandle, Big Bend region, and northern third of the peninsula, although there are also smaller islands of habitat in central Florida, in addition to the occupied range in South Florida. 5 large areas with suitable habitat for potential reestablishment of breeding panther populations were identified: Eglin Air Force Base, Apalachicola National Forest and vicinity, Big Bend region and the Northwest Peninsula, Osceola National Forest and vicinity, and Ocala National Forest. Combined, these areas could theoretically support approximately 499 to 798 adult and subadult panthers, contributing to or achieving recovery goals. These areas were analyzed with regard to habitat quality and extent, highway density, human residential density, potential for livestock depredations, and amount of protected public lands, and compared with the currently occupied panther range in South Florida. In some cases, the unoccupied areas matched or exceeded the currently occupied panther range with regard to these indicators. We conclude that there is ample suitable habitat remaining in the state of Florida for recovery of the Florida panther. However, due to existing impediments to dispersal and anticipated rapid development in Florida, natural recolonization of unoccupied habitat in North Florida seems unlikely. At this time, there is ample suitable habitat remaining in the state of Florida to support a viable population of Florida panthers. This study has identified and characterized 5 large areas of high-quality unoccupied habitat for consideration as possible sites for reestablishment of breeding panther populations. Conservation agencies have so far shown little inclination to attempt the full recovery of the subspecies by reintroduction to unoccupied habitat. The reason for this may be that these agencies prefer to await natural recolonization and thus avoid the political complications that might result from intentional relocation. However, natural recolonization may take decades if it ever occurs. With current and projected human population growth and continual losses of suitable habitat, the chances for natural recolonization will further diminish, especially if wildlife corridors are reduced or severed. The Florida panther is one of the most studied large mammals in the world. 40 years of research by numerous federal, state, and academic scientists have provided us with comprehensive knowledge of panther movements, home ranges, population biology, genetics, and habitat requirements. The results of this study should be useful in planning the next phase of panther recovery, establishment of self-sustaining, interconnected populations north of the Caloosahatchee River. Hi folks, here we are today in Ocala, Florida. We're at a land bridge, and this is the first of its kind in the United States. This is a wildlife corridor that runs across I-75. It's also used as bicycling path and a hiking path to get across from one side of the corridor to the other. This is part of the Greenway corridor in the state of Florida. So a long time ago, this property was bought out, this corridor was bought out to create a bargeway from the Gulf of Mexico over to the Atlantic. And they scrapped those plans, but what would have happened was it would have separated the wildlife from northern Florida and southern Florida. So what they've done is they've turned this corridor into a hiking trail and a bicycling trail, just an outdoor enthusiast paradise, really. But it also serves as a wildlife corridor from one side of I-75 to the other. Now along this corridor, they've got trail cams set up, and the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission has viewed many bears coming across here, as well as turkeys, deer, and other creatures, bobcats, using this corridor to get across the interstate safely. So it's very effective, folks. Now right now in Florida we have over 60 wildlife corridors. They're not all bridges like this. Some of them are underpasses that go under the interstates and the county roads, but this is one example of a wildlife corridor in the state of Florida that works. This, folks, helps prevent wildlife from getting struck by vehicles as they cross from one area to another. So you may be asking, well, how would the wildlife know to use one of these wildlife corridors? So what they do, folks, is they run fences down along each side of the interstate for quite a long ways, and they funnel the wildlife to come across in this area. There are several nonprofit organizations that are out there to assist in Florida panther conservation. I would like to acknowledge two in specific that are on the forefront of the fight to help our panthers to thrive. The first is the Nature Conservancy. This nonprofit has purchased conservation easements and is looking to expand the wildlife corridor north of the Caloosahatchee River to help the panther population recolonize further north into the state. Another great nonprofit is Defenders of Wildlife, who also secure and protect large interconnected tracts of wild land needed to expand the panther's range northward. This nonprofit also launched the Florida Panther Coexistence Program in 2004 to respond to an increase of panther depredations on livestock and pets. Defenders of Wildlife help fund and construct small enclosures to protect small livestock and pets. They also created an incentive program to work with local ranchers who are losing their livestock to panther depredation. In turn, these ranchers are adjusting to life alongside the Florida panther. When it comes to human interaction with the Florida panther, things have not always been so smooth. In 2014, Naples Zoo took in a Florida panther who had been shot by a rancher with a shotgun blast to the face and rear end. They were able to save the panther, but unfortunately, he lost his vision and was non-releasable to the wild. They named him Uno, and he became quite the ambassador for the Florida panther. Uno passed away in 2018, but his legacy lives on. The closest most humans will ever come to a panther encounter is at the zoo. The Florida panther has even been referred to as a ghost panther because they are so elusive in the wild that even a majority of Floridians will never see one in the wild. I've considered myself fortunate to have had 3 sightings behind my home near the lake. Zoo Tampa also has a great conservation program in rehabilitating injured and sick panthers, then rewilding them when possible. In this video, I have discussed the endangered Florida panther. It does us no good to simply breed these cats in captivity and never rewild them. Neither does it do any good to take measures to increase the population without first understanding where the threat lies with this magnificent species. Therefore, we discussed the negative consequences of a small gene pool and inbreeding. The answer to that threat was the genetic introgression program with the Texas puma, which was very successful. Next, we addressed the number 3 killer of panthers, which is the Pseudorabies virus, along with some possible ways that we can curb this negative trend. Finally, we spoke about shrinking and fragmented habitat of the panther, with 5 suitable panther habitats throughout the state, and how wildlife corridors can help prevent vehicle collisions, the number 1 killer of these big cats. We must learn to live alongside the Florida panther. They are natives to the land, and they were here first. So if you like the content we're putting out here, folks, do me a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, and comment down there in the Hiker's Log. And until next time, this is Old Paths with Backpacking Florida. I'll see you in the Hiker's Log, and you'll see me out on the trail.